Okay, so let's continue with baking our maps inside XNormal. Of course, if you're used to getting your maps out of ZBrush, yeah, that's awesome. Sometimes I do it, but I'm just more used to XNormal, so this is the way I do it. XNormal is a really cool software. It's free to use. You can download it without charge, and it has some really cool features. But let's get to the point. First, we already exported our high poly and low poly mesh. So to set them up inside XNormal, you just first go to this tab, High Definition Meshes. Right click, and if you have some other object you can easily remove it with this button, Remove Mesh from List. Then just click again right button, Add Meshes, and select the high poly. Just make sure that it's your high poly. And now, since our cube was really small, and you saw that in Max that caused some clipping problems with the camera, if you try to bake now the maps with this scale of the mesh, it could get difficult. It may not bake at all because the size of the mesh it's less than the ray distance, something like that. So what you need to do is just scroll here and find this option Mesh Scale, and we're gonna multiply the scale by exact value. We're gonna put 10. Other important thing, if you're gonna bake the diffuse texture, the polypaint from ZBrush, you need to make sure that this Ignore per vertex color option is unchecked. If it's checked, even if you select to bake the vertex paint, you get only a white texture with nothing on it. But for now we're gonna bake just the normal and the ambient. So yeah, this could stay on, because if it's off, that could sometimes create problems with the ambient occlusion map. You just need to switch between the two options. So for the normal map and the ambient occlusion map, this needs to be on. Now go to the low definition meshes. Again, you add the UV mapped low poly, not the other one. And again, you must be sure that the mesh scale is the same. I already typed the correct value. The mesh scale should be the exact same number for the high poly and the low poly. So once this is done, XNormal has this really useful option here under Tools. Just click on Ray Distance Calculator and click the button Go. That will create the exact correct values for the ray distance that is needed to bake properly the maps from the high poly to low poly. If you're using 3ds Max, you can recall that for this stuff you're using the projection master inside 3ds Max, and you have to manually adjust a cage mesh, and it's a really difficult, at least for me. It's not very I don't know, I prefer this one here, this automatic option, because you only need to wait a bit. And now here, when you see this timer, I prefer to wait like 40-50 seconds. Anything above 50 seconds is yeah, you don't need that much time spent computing. So for now I'll just press stop, and then you need to click this button, copy results. Click OK, and now you can close this window. So then all that is left is to go here to the baking options and just select the maps that you want to bake. So first we are gonna bake the normal and the ambient occlusion map. The ambient occlusion map has these options that can be accessed here if you click on this icon. Basically here on rays you can increase the number of rays. I think the default one was 128, but I increased it to get more detailed ambient occlusion map. And from here you can choose between uniform, cuisine and cuisine SQ. Basically the lower two types, the cuisine and cuisine SQ, will give you more crisp details and the uniform will get you more basic darker shapes on the ambient occlusion map. I prefer for now uniform. And normal map is fine. All you need to do here is to set up the size that you want for the texture. As I said, yeah, I like high-res textures, so of course I'm gonna bake a 4K texture map for this prop since it's really big. If you're baking a smaller rock prop, you can of course bake like 2K map, but for now I think it's better to have a 4K map and to downscale it later to 2K than to actually need a really high-res map and don't have the bigger source files. So once you get the size and the normal map in the ambient occlusion map selected, just go here and select the folder in which you want the maps to be stored and just type the name. I already baked the normal and the ambient occlusion map to save some time, but once you're ready you just press generate maps and you wait. That's it. So now we're gonna bake the vertex color texture. So as I said before, you need to uncheck from the high definition meshes tab this option, ignore per vertex color, just uncheck it. Go back to baking options, uncheck everything, scroll down here and find bake high polish vertex colors. And that's it. And just press generate maps. Now this one should be generated pretty quickly. In the meantime, I will just open the other textures in Photoshop. Yeah, as you can see, XNormal baked pretty fast the vertex pane. So just press close. And I'll open in Photoshop the vertex color. So now let's start with the normal map. Now as you can see, this is the normal map. It has some pretty nice edges, and as you can see here, a lot of the detail from the alpha maps has preserved. So yeah, don't worry that it doesn't have ultra fine details. As I said before, we're gonna compensate for that with the detail bump maps option inside the CryEngine editor. So what you need to do is go here into the channels, and okay, usually I delete the alpha channel because I don't really need that for now. Now all you need to do is to select the green channel, and you need to invert the values of the green channel in order to the normal map to work correctly inside CryEngine. So that means that right now the image gets black and white, but still it has the proper sense of volume. And when you press Ctrl I, you invert the green channel values, and you see that now the normal map looks kind of weird. And when you switch back to RGB, you see that instead of the green color getting here of the higher parts of the UV islands, now you get different colors, and you get a lot of a pink color. So that is a nice visual cue that you inverted properly the green channel. So once you did that, all you need to do now is to export this map to CryEngine. And now that we have our plugins for Photoshop installed, all you need to do is to go here, File, Save As, and now you need to go into your CryEngine directory. Inside, when you go into your main folder of CryEngine, go again in Game SDK folder, Textures, and here you can create your own folders. For example, here I have this folder, my rock textures. So I'm just gonna make this new folder called tutorial rocks, and inside from the format you should select Creative Plugin. Now, in order to properly export your normal maps inside CryEngine, you have to follow a specific naming convention. So, after normals in the name, your texture name should look like this: the name of the prop, underscore, normals, again underscore, and DDN. After every name of every normal map, you should type these 3 letters DDN. That tells CryEngine that this is a normal map texture. Otherwise, if you export it without this, it won't work. So just press save. And now you get the exporter window. So from here you can choose a list of presets. If you click here, okay, so now we're gonna select normal map high quality preset, and you need to click, yeah, don't worry, almost every time it gets this message, but it will look fine, don't worry. Just press no and select PC. Click here on choose resolution, and from here you can downscale or upscale your resolution of the texture, and that's really nice because even if you have a really high res texture, you can always downscale it inside the engine and see how it would look if it's 2K or 1K. For now, I'm gonna put it on this preset. It's still 4K, but it's a bit smaller in size, and that's really helpful in terms of frame rate and performance inside the level. So again, with this SWOT selected, just press OK, and that's it. Now let's start with the diffuse texture. Now this is the poly paint. I'm gonna just select the ambient occlusion, I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna paste it on top of the diffuse. And I like to use the multiply, of course on 100% opacity. It looks a bit too much, so yeah, I think that 75 it's good. Now, one trick that I like to use when I have some spots like this one, for example, or this one, is I just press my source textures that I used. Yeah. And just make sure that this is the proper one. Okay. I'm just gonna open them in Photoshop. And it's a cheap trick, but it works for me every time. I just select part of the high-res texture, the texture that I used for spot white. Just copy parts of her, paste her here, downscale it. Again, should be placed below the ambient occlusion. And just delete with the eraser its edges. So yeah, that will get you much sharper details on your diffuse map. Now, for example, you can select a different part of the texture, like this one. Now let's see where the texture is not looking very detailed. Yeah, maybe here. All right. So yeah, basically you can spend a lot of time tweaking your diffuse map and just following the visual guidelines for the types of textures that the props use. It's really helpful because I already know where we have moss on the rock, so now I can just paste a few pieces of the original texture, and that will guarantee that the diffuse inside CryEngine will have much better quality. Okay, so I won't spend too much time on this. I'm just showing you my workflow, the way I do this. For example, I think that okay, here in this terrace, I think that we could use a bit more detail. I'm gonna lower the opacity a bit and just follow the visual guidelines that are already in the texture. Now, one other trick that I like to use is let me just open the other texture. For example, I select this whole texture, I put it here, and I start selecting, for example, darken. I think that sometimes it works well, but yeah, probably something not that harsh. Yeah, it could get you just apply some extra detail on your rock texture. So I'm just gonna copy one final piece, and we're gonna export the diffuse texture as well. Now, a lot of guys tend to put a lot of edge highlights when they do rock props, and I think that for some cases that's okay. For example, here on the smaller rock, you see that this happens in nature. When smaller rocks collide a lot of each other and there's a lot of friction, they get this whiter highlights on the edges. But if you put this kind of edges everywhere on a bigger rock, it would look unrealistic, because as you can see, most of the big rocks don't have this kind of edges at all. So yeah, I preserve this kind of edges only for smaller rock props, and ours is kind of a big, so I mean, of course, you can always apply at some points a little bit of edge highlighting, but just don't go overboard with it, because in some games that really breaks the feeling of a organic looking rock. Okay, so now I think we're done. Maybe something that I would like to do is just to decrease the saturation a bit. Okay, something like that. And now, once we are ready, all we need to do is again export. Go again to the CryEngine, Game SDK folder, textures. Go to your folder that you're creating for your textures. Switch again to CryTIFF plugin, and then you don't need any special postfix in the name for the diffuse map. You only need to type diffuse. That's it. And from the list just choose diffuse high quality, press OK, and now all that is left to do is to create a specular map. So a really quick way to do this is okay, I'm gonna go here on the normal map and I'm gonna invert it again. And yeah, again, this is a kind of a hack, but it could produce some really cool looking results. So what you need to do is just go here and convert this image to black and white. Okay, so from now I guess we can copy the diffuse texture and just set it like this maybe, and from there it's just a matter of applying levels adjustment. Okay, maybe the color burn is not the best option here. Okay, so yeah, okay, I think something like that could work well. So we're gonna save this one. And this one needs spec typed after the name of the texture. That this is the name that CryEngine will recognize this as a specular map, just spec. Alright, so from here just choose specular high quality. Now for the specular map, maybe you could decrease the resolution, but for now we're gonna keep it 4K. We can always decrease it, of course. Alright, so I guess we're done for now, and in the next video we will just export our model from 3ds Max to CryEngine, and we will set up the material with the textures that we made here.